I remember that morning like it was frozen in time. I was sitting at our kitchen table, coffee going cold in my hands, when the doorbell rang. Harper went to answer it, and suddenly there was her mother, Patricia, standing in our doorway, dressed like she meant business with some guy in a crisp suit, carrying a leather briefcase beside her. My wife turned back to me, and I barely recognized the look in her eyes. "Hutchin, we need to talk. Mom is here with a notary." Her voice was ice. This was not the warm, affectionate woman I had married. I looked past her at Patricia, at that calculated smile on her face, and my stomach dropped. The moment I had been dreading for 2 years had finally arrived. Those 3 apartments I inherited from my grandfather, the secret I had kept locked away, were about to come out. But what they did not know was that I had been preparing for this day all along. Before I tell you how this confrontation unfolded, I would love to know where you are watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. If you have ever had to protect something precious from the wrong people, hit that like button. And subscribe, because this story takes some unexpected turns you will not want to miss. Now let me take you back to where it all started. I met Harper 3 years ago at an art gallery opening in Brooklyn. It was one of those warm September evenings where the city feels alive with possibility. She was standing in front of a massive abstract painting, tilting her head like she was trying to decode some hidden message in the chaos of colors. When I walked up and made some awkward joke about whether the artist had just thrown paint at the canvas, she laughed. Not a polite laugh, but a real one that made her whole face light up. We spent the next 2 hours talking, ignoring the art entirely, and by the end of the night, I had her number and a feeling in my chest I had not felt in years. Harper worked at a small gallery in the city. She was energetic, genuinely passionate about art, and had this way of making everyday moments feel special. We fell hard and fast. A year of dating turned into a proposal on a snowy night in Central Park. And 6 months after that, we were married in a simple ceremony with close friends and family. Those first 2 years of marriage were good. We rented a small apartment in Queens, split the bills down the middle, cooked dinner together most nights. Harper never asked for much. She seemed happy with our modest life. I worked as a civil engineer for a construction firm, pulling in a decent salary, and she had her gallery job. We were not rich, but we were comfortable. Life felt uncomplicated, the way I always hoped marriage would be. Then, 18 months ago, my grandfather Harold passed away. He was 87, and honestly, it felt like he had lived every one of those years fully. I was close to him in a way I was never close to my own parents. After their messy divorce when I was 12, Grandpa Harold had been the steady presence in my life. He taught me how to fix things, how to save money, how to be patient. His funeral was small and quiet, just the way he would have wanted it. He was not the type to make a fuss. He lived in the same rent-controlled apartment in the Bronx for 40 years, drove the same beat-up sedan until it finally gave out, wore clothes until they fell apart. I loved him for that humility. About a week after the funeral, I got a call from a lawyer named David Brennan. He asked me to come to his office in Midtown for the reading of the will. I expected maybe some old furniture, perhaps a few $1,000s if I was lucky. What I did not expect was to walk out of that office as the sole owner of 3 apartments in Manhattan. Grandpa Harold had bought them back in the early 1980s when the city was dirt cheap and dangerous. Over the decades, as the city transformed, those properties had become worth over $4 million combined. I sat in that leather chair in Mr. Brennan's office, staring at the documents, completely unable to process what I was hearing. My grandfather, who wore the same jacket for 15 years, had been quietly wealthy this entire time and never said a word. The will was crystal clear. Everything went to me. Not my cousins, not some charity, just me. Mr. Brennan explained that my grandfather had been very specific. He wanted me to have security, to have options, to never feel trapped the way he had felt when he was young and broke. That evening, I drove home in a daze. I kept rehearsing in my head how I would tell Harper, "Honey, you are not going to believe this. My grandfather left me 3 apartments in Manhattan. We are set for life." I imagined her face lighting up, the two of us celebrating, planning our future. But when I walked through the door and saw her sitting on the couch scrolling through her phone, something made me pause. I remembered a conversation we had a few months earlier. One of her co-workers had inherited money from a distant relative, and Harper had brought it up over dinner. Can you imagine if that were us, we would never have to worry again? It was the way she said it, the gleam in her eyes, like she was calculating what she would do with money that was not even hers. At the time, I brushed it off as normal daydreaming. But standing there in our apartment, inheritance papers in my bag, that memory felt different. It felt like a warning. So I made a choice. I told Harper that Grandpa Harold had left me a few personal items, some old watches and books, nothing of real value. She seemed disappointed for a moment, said something about how it was sweet that he thought of me, and then the conversation moved on. I felt guilty, but I also felt something else. Relief. I decided to wait to see how things played out to make sure I was not making a mistake. I contacted Mr. Brennan privately and made sure all the paperwork stayed confidential. The apartments remained in my name alone, and I told no one. 2 months later, Patricia showed up for one of her visits. Harper's mother was 56, sharply dressed, always perfectly put together in a way that felt more like armor than style. She had been divorced twice, lived alone in a small house in New Jersey, and had a habit of inserting herself into our lives more than I was comfortable with. That particular evening, she sat at our dining table and started asking questions about our finances. "So, Sebastian, how is the engineering business? You two thinking about buying a place soon?" Her tone was casual, but her eyes were not. They were scanning, evaluating, measuring my worth. Harper jumped in quickly. "Mom, we are fine. We are saving up." But Patricia kept pushing. "What is your salary like these days? Do you have a retirement fund? Any investments?" I answered vaguely, politely, giving her nothing concrete. After Patricia left that night, I could not shake the feeling that I had just been interrogated. It was not concern for her daughter. It was something else. Something that felt like calculation. In the weeks following that visit, Harper started to change. It was subtle at first. She began mentioning money more often, talking about friends who were buying condos, comparing our life to theirs. "All our friends are buying places, Sebastian. We are still renting like we are 25. There was no anger in her voice, just this creeping disappointment. She asked about my career trajectory, whether I had opportunities for promotion, if I had considered switching firms for better pay. I explained that my job was stable, that we were doing fine, that these things took time. She would nod, but I could see the frustration behind her eyes. Our evenings changed too. Harper started spending more time on her phone, scrolling through real estate listings, showing me apartments we could never afford. "Look at this place, Sebastian. 3 bedrooms, a balcony. Would not that be perfect?" I would nod and make non-committal sounds, and she would put the phone down with this look of quiet defeat. The woman I married, the one who was happy cooking pasta in our tiny kitchen, seemed to be slipping away, replaced by someone who measured happiness in square footage and property values. Then came the phone call I was never supposed to hear. I got home early one evening, maybe around 6:30. Harper was in the bedroom with the door closed, and I could hear her voice low and urgent. I was not trying to eavesdrop. I was just standing in the hallway taking off my jacket when I caught fragments of the conversation. Mom, I do not know. He never talks about money. There has to be something. Maybe there is something he is not telling me. And then Patricia's voice through the speaker, sharp and clear. You need to find out Harper. You are his wife. You have a right to know everything. I stood there frozen, my heart hammering in my chest. This was not a daughter venting to her mother. This was a conspiracy. I knocked on the door, and Harper practically jumped. She fumbled with her phone, ending the call quickly. Oh, you are home early. Her voice was too bright, too forced. Who was that, I asked. Just Mom checking in. She smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. I did not confront her. Part of me wanted to believe I was overreacting, that this was just normal marital tension, that she was simply worried about our future. But the seed of doubt had taken root, and it was growing. Patricia started visiting more frequently after that. Almost every week she would show up with some excuse. I miss my daughter. I was just in the neighborhood. But every visit came with questions. Why do you not upgrade your car, Sebastian? You can afford something nicer, can you not? Young couples should travel, see the world. Have you thought about investing in property? Her suggestions were relentless, always probing, always pushing me to reveal something I was not willing to share. I stayed polite, deflected her questions, but the tension in the apartment grew thicker with each visit. Harper became distant. The affection we once shared, the little moments of connection, evaporated. She stopped reaching for my hand when we watched television. She stopped kissing me goodnight. Our conversations became transactional. Did you pay the electric bill? We need groceries. What time will you be home? It felt like living with a stranger. One night, it all boiled over. Harper confronted me directly. Sebastian, are you hiding something from me? Her voice cracked with emotion, anger mixed with hurt. We are supposed to be partners, but you treat me like a stranger when it comes to money. I tried to stay calm. I am not hiding anything, Harper. We share everything we have. She shook her head. Dewey, your grandfather just died, and you said he left nothing. But I saw the paperwork you tried to hide. There was something about property. My blood went cold. She had been going through my things, searching for evidence like I was a criminal. I tried to deny it. It was just old documents, Harper. Nothing valuable. But she was not buying it anymore. I do not believe you. Mom said you are probably hiding assets. That sentence hit me like a punch to the gut. Patricia had poisoned her mind, completely turned my wife against me. I felt betrayed in a way I had never felt before. Harper did not trust me. She trusted her mother more. The argument ended in cold silence. Harper slept on the couch that night, and I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering how we had gotten here. A week after that fight, everything came to a head. I came home early from a job site around 3 in the afternoon. I opened the door expecting an empty apartment, but instead I found Harper and Patricia sitting at our dining table. Papers were spread everywhere. Harper's laptop was open, and on the screen were photos of all 3 of my apartments in Manhattan pulled up from public property records. They had found out. My secret was gone. I stood in the doorway, frozen, feeling completely exposed. Harper turned to face me, her face flushed red with anger. So it is true. You lied to me this whole time. Patricia stood up slowly like she was the one in charge here. We need to talk, Sebastian. Sit down. Her voice was cold, commanding, like I was a child being called to the principal's office. I did not sit. I stayed by the door. How did you find out? I asked. Harper's voice was shaking. Does it matter? The point is, you have been lying for over a year and a half. Patricia took control of the conversation. Sebastian Harper is your wife. In New York, she is entitled to half of all marital assets. I corrected her immediately. Those apartments were inherited. They are separate property, not marital assets. Patricia smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Are you sure about that? You acquired them during your marriage? We have consulted with a lawyer. Harper has grounds to claim a significant portion, especially considering you deliberately concealed assets. That is fraud in a marriage. She slid a stack of papers across the table toward me. This is a post-nuptial agreement. It clearly outlines a fair division of the properties. I picked up the document and skimmed through it, my hands trembling with anger. The agreement demanded that I transfer 50% ownership of 2 of the apartments to Harper. The third apartment, according to the document, would be signed over entirely to compensate for emotional distress and legal fees. I looked up at Patricia in disbelief. You want me to give away properties worth millions of dollars because your daughter is upset? Patricia's face was stone. Sign this, and we can all move past this unfortunate situation. Otherwise, Harper will file for divorce, and we will see you in court. Harper sat there silently staring down at her hands. She would not even look at me. In that moment, I realized the full scope of what was happening. This was not about hurt feelings or broken trust. This was a shakedown. Patricia had orchestrated the whole thing, and Harper had gone along with it. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew, was sitting there letting her mother extort me. I put the papers down slowly, and when I spoke, my voice was calm in a way that surprised even me. No, I will not sign this. Patricia's face turned red. Excuse me, this is not a negotiation, Sebastian. I looked her straight in the eye. You are right. It is not a negotiation. Because I am not discussing my inheritance with you. You have no legal right to any of it, and you know it. I turned to Harper. Is this really what you want? To shake me down with your mother? To threaten me in my own home? Harper finally spoke, her voice trembling. It is not a shakedown. It is fairness. We are married. You hid things from me. I felt my chest tighten. Married people trust each other, Harper. You went through my private documents. You conspired with your mother behind my back. You brought legal threats into our home. And you are talking to me about fairness. Patricia stepped between us. You forfeited trust when you lied. I turned on her. This is between me and my wife. You need to leave. Now. Patricia crossed her arms. I am not going anywhere until this is resolved. I pulled out my phone and started dialing. Then I will call the police. You are trespassing. Patricia's confidence cracked. You would not dare. I held the phone to my ear. Try me. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Patricia grabbed her papers and her purse. Fine. But this is not over, Sebastian. Before she walked out, she turned to Harper one last time. Do not let him bully you. You deserve that money. The door slammed shut behind her, and the apartment fell into heavy silence. I looked at Harper. She was still sitting at the table, tears streaming down her face. How long have you been planning this? I asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. I was not planning anything. Mom said you were hiding things, that I had rights that I deserved to know. I shook my head. And you believed her over me. You searched through my things like I was some criminal. She stood up, her voice rising. You lied to me, Sebastian. About your grandfather, about the inheritance. You made me look like a fool. I felt something break inside me. I did not lie. I protected what was mine. And now I know exactly why I should have. Harper looked at me, confusion and fear crossing her face. What does that mean? It means I see who you really are now. You and your mother. This marriage is over. The words came out flat final. Harper went pale. What? No, Sebastian, we can work through this. We can go to counseling. We can fix this. I shook my head. There is nothing to fix. You made your choice. Pack your things. I want you out by tomorrow. Harper's voice broke. You cannot just kick me out. I kept my voice steady. This apartment is in my name. You can go stay with your mother. I am sure she will be thrilled. Harper moved out within 2 days. She took her clothes, some furniture we had bought together, and she left without another word. I hired David Brennan, the same lawyer who had handled my grandfather's estate. Patricia tried to fight, hired her own attorney, sent threatening letters claiming Harper was entitled to compensation. But the legal reality was clear. The 3 apartments were inherited property gifted solely to me by name in a will. They were acquired during the marriage, yes, but inheritance law in New York is explicit. Unless I had commingled the assets with marital funds, or added Harper's name to the deeds which I had not, they remained my separate property. Patricia's lawyer knew it. After 3 months of back and forth, the divorce was finalized. I kept all 3 apartments. Harper received half of our small joint savings account, which amounted to a few $1,000s, and that was it. We have not spoken since. A few weeks after the divorce was final, my best friend Marcus told me something that made everything click into place. He had run into Patricia at a party years ago, back before Harper and I even got engaged. Patricia had asked him all sorts of questions about me. What does Sebastian do for work? Does he come from money? What is his family like? At the time, Marcus thought she was just being a concerned mother doing her due diligence. But looking back now, it was clear. Patricia had been sizing me up from the very beginning, trying to figure out if I was worth her daughter's time. Marcus also mentioned that Harper had complained to mutual friends more than once about our modest lifestyle, saying things like, I thought we would be further along by now. Friends who had seemed supportive during our marriage quietly admitted they had noticed Harper's dissatisfaction. She had expectations I never knew about, dreams of wealth and status that I was never going to fulfill on an engineer's salary alone. The realization stung. Maybe Harper had loved me once in her own way, but that love was conditional. It was not strong enough to survive the disappointment of an ordinary life. The months after the divorce were hard. I would come home to an empty apartment and feel the weight of the silence. I questioned myself constantly. Should I have told her from the beginning? Was I wrong to keep the inheritance secret? But every time I spiraled into doubt, I would remember that moment at the dining table. Patricia with her notary, Harper with her cold eyes, the legal papers demanding I hand over millions, and I would realize I was not wrong. I had protected myself from people who saw me as a bank account, not as a person. Slowly, I started rebuilding. I spent more time with friends like Marcus, people who had been there for me without asking for anything in return. I picked up old hobbies I had abandoned during my marriage, started running again, reading more, traveling on my own terms. I rented out 2 of the 3 apartments, and the passive income gave me financial freedom I had never experienced before. The 3rd apartment, a beautiful place with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, became my home. I moved in and finally felt like I could breathe. About 6 months after the divorce, I met someone new. Her name was Leah. She was a nurse at a hospital in Brooklyn, kind, and grounded in a way that felt like fresh air. We met at a coffee shop, struck up a conversation about a book she was reading, and started seeing each other casually. I did not tell her about the apartments right away. I wanted to know who she was first to see if she liked me for me, and she did. She never asked about money, never cared that I drove an old car or wore the same jacket all the time. When I finally told her about the inheritance months later, she just smiled and said, "That is amazing, Sebastian. I am happy you are secure." And then she changed the subject. That was it. No scheming, no sudden interest in my bank account. Just genuine happiness for me. It was the kind of response I wish I had gotten from Harper. Looking back on everything now, I have learned a few things that I carry with me. The first is that trust does not mean transparency about everything. It is okay to have boundaries to protect parts of yourself until you are certain someone deserves access to them. Love is not about pooling every asset and sharing every secret on day one. It is about earning each other's trust over time. If someone truly loves you, they will respect your need for privacy and security. They will not demand access to everything you own just because you share a life together. The second lesson is that money reveals people's true nature. When there is nothing at stake, it is easy for people to be kind and supportive. But introduce wealth into the equation, and you see who people really are. Harper and Patricia were not evil. They were not villains in some melodrama. They were just ordinary people who let greed cloud their judgment. They convinced themselves they were entitled to something that was never theirs, and they were willing to destroy a marriage to get it. That is a choice they made, and they have to live with it. The third lesson is one my grandfather taught me without ever saying it out loud. Grandpa Harold lived modestly his entire life, even though he had the means to live lavishly. He did that because he understood something fundamental about wealth. Money does not define you, but it does test you. It tests your character, your relationships, your sense of self. He left those 3 apartments to me not so I could show off or live extravagantly, but so I would have security and options. He knew the world could be cruel and unpredictable, and he wanted me to have a safety net. Maybe in some way, he also knew that not everyone in my life would have my best interests at heart. Maybe he was protecting me even after he was gone. I do not regret keeping the inheritance a secret. What I regret is marrying someone who was not the person I thought she was. But that is a lesson I needed to learn, painful as it was. Now I am free. I am at peace. I am more careful about who I let into my life. Those 3 apartments are still there, standing as a reminder of my grandfather's quiet wisdom and my own hard-earned understanding of human nature. And as for love, I am learning that it does not have to be perfect. It just has to be real. Sometimes the things we hide are not secrets. They are shields. And if someone tries to tear down your shield just to see what is behind it, maybe they never deserved your trust in the first place. So let me ask you something. Have you ever had to protect yourself from someone you loved? Have you ever kept something private because you knew deep down it was the right choice? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I would love to hear your stories. And if this one resonated with you, hit that like button and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more real-life stories about trust betrayal and finding your way through the mess. Thank you for listening. I hope you find people in your life who see you for who you are, not for what you have. Take care of yourselves out there.